I wasn't running for exercise. I was running because the alternative was being sold like a piece of discount furniture to a man 3 times my age with a reputation that made the devil look like a choir boy. My stepmother, Lydia, didn't call it selling, of course. She called it a merger, a way to settle my late father's gambling debts I hadn't known existed until the ink was drying on his death certificate. "Ilara, get back here, you ungrateful little wretch!" Lydia's voice screeched from the porch, cutting through the thunder. I didn't look back. I clutched the strap of my tattered backpack tighter, my knuckles white. Inside was everything I owned: a change of socks, a picture of my mom, and $42 in crumpled bills. My lungs burned. The cold October air tasted like iron and exhaust fumes. I scrambled over the back gate of the estate, the house I grew up in, now a prison, and hit the wet asphalt of the alleyway. My ankle twisted, sending a jolt of lightning up my leg. But adrenaline was a powerful anesthetic. I limped, then ran, my cheap canvas sneakers slapping against the puddles. I needed to get to the city center. I needed a bus, a train, anything. But the flashing blue lights at the end of the alleyway froze my blood. Police. Lydia had called them. She probably told them I stole her jewelry. She'd done it before to keep me in line. I ducked behind a dumpster, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I couldn't go forward, and I couldn't go back. I was trapped in the affluent labyrinth of North Seattle, where pedestrians were rare and security cameras were plentiful. I scrambled sideways, cutting through a hedge into the parking lot of a high-end private club, the Emerald Lounge. It was the kind of place my father used to go before the whiskey took him. Rows of cars gleamed under the amber streetlights: Porsches, Bentleys, machines worth more than my entire life. I needed a hiding spot, just for a moment, just until the police cruiser rolled past. My eyes landed on a beast of a vehicle parked in the darkest corner of the lot, a black SUV. It wasn't just a car, it was a tank dressed in a tuxedo, massive, sleek, with windows tinted so dark they looked like voids. I crept toward it, staying low. The rain was soaking through my thin hoodie, chilling me to the bone. I tried the handle of a silver Lexus. Locked. I tried a red Mercedes. Locked. I reached the black SUV. I didn't expect it to open. People with cars like this didn't leave them unlocked. But as my fingers brushed the handle, there was a soft click. The mirror unfolded. Keyless entry? Did someone unlock it remotely? I didn't have time to question fate. The wail of the siren was getting louder. I yanked the back door open and threw myself inside, pulling it shut as quietly as I could. Silence. The instant the door sealed, the noise of the storm vanished. The interior was soundproof to perfection. It smelled incredible, not like the stale cigarettes of my stepmother's house. This smelled like expensive leather, sandalwood, and something sharp and metallic like ozone before a lightning strike. I huddled on the floorboard behind the driver's seat, pulling my knees to my chest. My wet clothes were ruining the plush carpet, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I was shaking, my teeth chattering uncontrollably. Just 10 minutes, I told myself. Wait for the cops to pass, then run to the shelter. I must have closed my eyes. The adrenaline crash was hitting me hard, dragging me into a gray fog. The warmth of the car was seducing me into a dangerous stupor. I didn't hear the driver's door open. The first thing I felt was a shift in air pressure. The suspension of the massive vehicle barely dipped, but the atmosphere inside changed instantly. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. A heavy door slammed, shut. The lock engaged with a decisive thud. My eyes snapped open. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins. I held my breath, pressing my hand over my mouth. The engine roared to life. It wasn't a normal engine. It was a low, predatory growl that vibrated through the floorboards and into my spine. "Go," a voice said. It was a single word, spoken from the back seat, directly above where I was hiding on the floor. The voice was a baritone, so deep it felt like a physical weight. It was raspy, not from age, but from disuse or perhaps from too much whiskey. It commanded absolute authority. "Yes, sir," the driver replied from the front. The car began to move. I was trapped. I was hiding at the feet of a man whose voice alone made my skin prickle with a primal warning. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying to a God I hadn't spoken to in years. Please let him just be a rich businessman. Please let him just drop me off. But as the car accelerated, gliding effortlessly over the roads, the man in the back seat shifted. I saw his shoes. They were Italian leather, polished to a mirror shine, and, resting near them, dropped carelessly onto the floor mat, was a gun. A matte black semi-automatic pistol. I bit down on my lip so hard I tasted copper. This wasn't a businessman. I had jumped out of the frying pan into a volcano.
20 minutes. That's how long I lay crumpled on the floorboard, my muscles cramping, my breath shallow. The car ride was smooth, but the tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. The man above me hadn't spoken a word since his initial command. He was on his phone. I could hear the rapid tapping of fingers on glass, but he made no calls. The silence was worse than shouting. It was the silence of a predator stalking its territory. Suddenly, the partition window between the driver and the back seat slid up with a soft whir, sealing us off from the chauffeur. "You can come out now," the voice rumbled. My heart stopped. I didn't move. Maybe he was talking to someone on the phone? "I can hear your heartbeat, little mouse," he said, his tone bored but laced with a dangerous edge. "It's fluttering like a dying bird, and you're ruining my custom floor mats with your wet shoes. Get up, before I drag you up." The threat wasn't shouted. It was stated as a simple fact. Trembling, I pushed myself up. My limbs felt heavy and useless. I sat on the edge of the plush leather seat, hugging my backpack to my chest like a shield. For the first time, I looked at him. The air left my lungs. He was terrifyingly beautiful. That was the only way to describe him. He sat in the corner of the spacious cabin, legs crossed at the ankle, looking at me with an expression of utter indifference. He had hair the color of midnight, swept back carelessly. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, covered in a shadow of stubble. But it was his eyes that froze me. They were dark, obsidian, bottomless. They didn't reflect light. They seemed to absorb it. He wore a black suit that cost more than my stepmother's house. The top 2 buttons of his white shirt were undone, revealing a glimpse of tan skin and a silver chain. He radiated power, not the kind of power a politician has, but the kind of raw kinetic energy of a wolf leading a pack. I'm sorry," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. I just needed to hide. I'll get out, please." He tilted his head, studying me. He didn't look at my face. He looked at my wet hoodie, my torn jeans, the bruise blossoming on my cheek. His nostrils flared slightly, as if he were scenting the air. "Hide from whom?" he asked. "My stepmother. The police. It's complicated," I said, my hand reaching for the door handle. "The child lock is on," he said dryly, "and we are currently doing 80 on the expressway. Unless you can fly, sit down." I slumped back, defeat washing over me. "Who are you?" A corner of his mouth twitched up. It wasn't a smile. It was a baring of teeth. "The man who owns the car you just broke into. The question is, who are you? You smell of fear and cheap soap." "Ilara," I whispered. "Ilara." He tested the name, rolling the R slightly. "Well, Ilara, you have a choice. You can tell me exactly why you're in my car, or I can hand you over to the men pursuing you. And rest assured, I know exactly who called the police in North Seattle tonight." "No," I shouted, the fear spiking. "No, please. She's trying to sell me." His brows furrowed slightly. The indifference cracked just for a nanosecond. "Sell you?" "To a man named Vinnie Rossi. She owes him money. She said I was the payment." The temperature in the car plummeted to absolute 0. The man's eyes narrowed into slits. The playful, bored demeanor evaporated, replaced with a cold, terrifying intensity. He leaned forward, encroaching on my space. The scent of sandalwood and danger overwhelmed me. "Vinnie Rossi," he repeated, the name sounding like a curse on his tongue. "You are Lydia Vance's stepdaughter?" I nodded, eyes wide. "How do you know her?" He laughed, a dark, humorless sound. "Everyone in this city knows everyone in the sewers, Ilara. Vinnie Rossi is a bottom feeder, a rat." He looked at me again, but this time the look was different. It wasn't dismissive, it was assessing, possessive, like he was looking at an object he had just decided to buy. "Turn around," he commanded. "What?" "Look at me." He reached out, his hand gripping my chin. His fingers were rough, calloused, hot against my cold skin. He tilted my face up to the dim light of the car. He tilted your face up to the dim light of the car. He tilted your face up to the dim light of the car. His thumb brushed the tender skin of my cheek. I flinched, but I didn't pull away. I couldn't. His touch sent a strange jolt of electricity through me, confusing my fear with something else entirely. "I'm not going back," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "I'd rather jump out of this car." "Unlikely," he murmured, his thumb still tracing my jawline. "But you have created a problem for me, Ilara. You've seen my face, you're in my car, and you are connected to my enemies." "I'm not your enemy," I pleaded. "I'm nobody." "You are not nobody anymore," he said softly. He released my chin and sat back, pulling his phone out again. "What are you doing?" "Solving a problem." He pressed the intercom button. "Enzo, change of plans. We aren't going to the warehouse. Take us to the estate." "The estate? Where are you taking me? Let me out." He looked at me, his obsidian eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that pinned me to the seat. "You wanted to escape, Ilara? You wanted to run from the rats?" He gestured to the window where the city lights were fading into the dark, winding roads of the private hills. "Congratulations, you've just run straight into the wolf's den." "Who are you?" I asked again, my voice trembling. He smirked, a dangerous, predatory expression that made my toes curl. "I am Dante Moretti." I stopped breathing. Even hiding in the suburbs, I knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Dante Moretti, the capo dei capi, the head of heads, the dawn of the Seattle Mafia. They called him the Alpha because he didn't just lead, he ruled, he slaughtered. I hadn't hidden in a businessman's car. I had hidden in the personal transport of the most dangerous man on the West Coast. "Buckle up, Ilara," Dante said, closing his eyes as if he were going to sleep. "Your life as you know it is over." The estate was not a house. It was a fortress carved out of the cliffside, overlooking the churning Pacific Ocean. As the SUV wound up the long, private driveway, I saw walls topped with razor wire and cameras that tracked our movement with red, unblinking eyes. Men in dark suits with earpieces stood at the iron gates, holding assault rifles casually across their chests. When they saw the car, they didn't just open the gate, they bowed their heads. Dante hadn't spoken the rest of the ride. He had just sat there, radiating that dark, heavy energy, occasionally glancing at me as if checking that I hadn't evaporated. The car stopped in front of a sprawling modern mansion made of glass, steel, and black stone. It looked cold, impenetrable. The driver, Enzo, opened the door for Dante. Dante stepped out, buttoning his suit jacket, and then turned to look at me. I was still huddled in the corner. "I don't carry passengers," he said. "Walk." I scrambled out, my legs jelly. The rain had stopped, but the wind off the ocean was fierce. I shivered violently. Dante looked at me, sighed an annoyed, impatient sound, and peeled off his suit jacket. Before I could protest, he draped it over my shoulders. It was heavy, warm, and smelled overwhelmingly of him. That scent, rain, expensive tobacco, and musk enveloped me. It made my head spin. "Move," he ordered, placing a hand on the small of my back. His heat burned through my wet hoodie. He guided me up the stairs, his grip firm, possessive. We entered the foyer. It was cavernous, with marble floors that reflected a massive crystal chandelier. "Boss?" A man approached us. He was older, with a scar running down his face.
He looked at me with confusion, then suspicion. "Who is this?" "A stray," Dante said, removing his hand from my back. "Found her in the car." "A stray?" The scarred man frowned. "Security breach?" "She slipped past the perimeter at the club. Luck," Dante said, though his eyes said he didn't believe in luck. "She's Lydia Vance's stepdaughter." The scarred man's eyes widened. "Rossi's leverage?" "Precisely," Dante said. He turned to me. "Ilara, this is Marco, my underboss. Marco, get her dry clothes, something that doesn't smell like a dumpster. Then bring her to my study." "Wait," I said, finding my voice. "I'm not a prisoner. I haven't done anything wrong." Dante paused on the first step of the grand staircase. He turned slowly, looking down at me from his height. He looked like a dark god judging a mortal. "You trespassed on my property," he said calmly. "You are involved in a dispute with a rival family, and you are currently wearing my $3,000 jacket. In my world, Ilara, you are whatever I say you are." He leaned down, his face inches from mine. "And right now, you are my guest. Do not make me change your status to prisoner. You wouldn't like the accommodations." He turned and ascended the stairs, disappearing into the shadows of the second floor. 20 minutes later, I was standing in a bathroom bigger than my bedroom, staring at myself in the mirror. I had scrubbed the grime off my face. Marco had given me a plain black t-shirt and a pair of gray sweatpants. They were huge on me, obviously men's clothes, but they were dry and soft. I rolled up the sleeves and took a deep breath. Escape. I needed to escape. I went to the window. We were on a cliff. It was a sheer drop to the rocks below. No way out there. The door was the only exit. I opened the bathroom door. Marco was waiting for me, arms crossed. "Don't even think about it," he grunted. "Follow me." He led me down a hallway lined with expensive art to a set of double mahogany doors. He knocked once, then opened them. Dante was sitting behind a massive desk made of dark wood. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from the fireplace and the glow of his laptop. He had a glass of amber liquid in his hand. "Leave us," Dante commanded. Marco nodded and shut the door, leaving me alone with the wolf. "Sit," Dante said, gesturing to a leather chair opposite him. I sat, curling my legs under me. I felt small, insignificant. "I checked your story," Dante said, his voice smooth. "Lydia Vance is indeed in debt to Rossi for $2 million. The deadline is tomorrow at midnight." My stomach churned. She really sold me?" "She offered you as collateral," Dante corrected. "Rossi has a taste for young, innocent things. He agreed to wipe the debt in exchange for you." I felt bile rise in my throat. I covered my mouth, tears pricking my eyes. "I can't go back. Please. I'll work. I'll scrub your floors. Just don't send me back." Dante watched me. He took a slow sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving my face. He seemed to be calculating, weighing variables in a complex equation. "I have no intention of scrubbing floors," he said, "and I have no intention of giving Rossi what he wants. Rossi is a thorn in my side. If he gets you, he secures his alliance with the Vance estate and gains a foothold in the shipping district your father controlled." He stood up and walked around the desk. He moved with a prowling grace, silent and deadly. He stopped in front of me, leaning against the edge of the desk, towering over me. "I am going to offer you a deal, Ilara." I looked up at him, wiping a tear away. "What kind of deal?" "Protection," he said. "I will keep you here, safe. Rossi cannot touch you within these walls. Lydia cannot reach you." "And in return?" I asked, knowing there was always a price. Dante smiled. It was a wicked, devastating smile that made my heart hammer against my ribs. "In return," he said, his voice dropping to a husky whisper, "you belong to me." "Belong to you?" I squeaked. "Like a slave?" "No," he chuckled darkly, "like a fake fiancé." My jaw dropped. "What?" "I need a distraction," Dante explained, examining his fingernails. "My board is pressuring me to settle down, to appear more stable to our international investors. They think I am too volatile, too much of a wild animal. They want to see a domesticated Dante Moretti." He looked back at me, his eyes burning. "You need safety.
I need a respectable image for the upcoming gala season. You are young, pretty enough in a rough sort of way, and evidently desperate." He reached out, tucking a stray lock of damp hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered on my neck, right over my pulse point. I knew he could feel how fast my heart was beating. "So," he murmured, "we make a trade. You play the part of my adoring fiancé for 3 months. You live here, you wear my ring, you warm my bed, figuratively speaking," he added with a smirk, "and I ensure that Lydia and Rossi never touch a hair on your head again." "And after 3 months?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "After 3 months, you are free, with $5 million in your bank account." $5 million. Freedom. Safety. But looking into Dante's eyes, those bottomless, swirling voids of darkness, I realized the danger wasn't just Rossi. The danger was him. He was an alpha, a conqueror. If I agreed to this, I wasn't just signing a contract. I was walking willingly into his cage. "Why me?" I asked. "You could have any model, any heiress." "Because," he said, leaning in, so close his lips brushed my ear, sending shivers cascading down my spine, "you are the only one who looked at me with fear, Ilara. The others, they look at my money. You see the monster. And yet," he pulled back, his eyes searching mine, "and yet you got in the car." He held out his hand. It was large, scarred, and strong. "Do we have a deal, little mouse?" I looked at his hand. Then I thought of Lydia. I thought of Vinnie Rossi's greasy hands. I took a deep breath, reached out, and placed my small, trembling hand in his. "Deal," I whispered. His fingers closed around mine, swallowing my hand completely. He pulled me to my feet, bringing me flush against his hard chest. The air crackled with tension. "Good," Dante growled, his voice vibrating through me. "Then welcome home, fiancé." I woke up drowning in silk. For a moment, just a fleeting heartbeat, I forgot where I was. The mattress beneath me was softer than clouds, the sheets cool and smelling of lavender. I reached out, expecting to hit the peeling wallpaper of my attic room at my stepmother's estate. Instead, my hand brushed against carved mahogany. Memory crashed back into me like a tidal wave. The rain, the SUV, the gun, Dante Moretti. I sat up, gasping. The room was massive, bathed in the gray morning light of the Pacific Northwest. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over a churning, violent ocean. The furniture was dark, minimalistic, and terrifyingly expensive. I swung my legs out of bed. I was still wearing the oversized t-shirt Marco had given me. I crept toward the door, turning the heavy brass handle. Locked. Panic, sharp and immediate, spiked in my chest. I rattled the handle. "Hello? Is anyone there?" "It's for your safety," a deep voice rumbled from the corner of the room. I spun around, my back hitting the door. Dante was sitting in a wingback chair in the shadows, reading a newspaper, a physical newspaper. He looked impossibly fresh for someone who likely hadn't slept. He wore a charcoal gray vest over a white dress shirt, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and inked with faint, intricate tattoos I hadn't noticed the night before. "You locked me in?" I accused, my voice trembling. "You locked the world out," he corrected, not looking up from the paper. "There is a difference." He folded the paper precisely and set it on a side table. Then he stood. The room suddenly felt very small. He moved toward me, his steps silent on the plush rug. "Did you sleep well, fiancé?" I don't know. How long have you been watching me?" "Long enough to know you whimper in your sleep," he said. He stopped 2 feet away from me. "Nightmares?" "Memories," I whispered. A low sound that vibrated in his chest. "We will replace them." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black velvet box. He snapped it open. I audibly gasped. Inside sat a diamond the size of a quail's egg. It was an oval cut, flawless, set in platinum, and surrounded by a halo of smaller obsidian stones. It was beautiful, but it looked heavy. It looked like a shackle. "Give me your hand," he commanded.
I hesitated. Dante, this is too much. People will know it's fake. Who gives a diamond this big? A man who owns the city, he said simply. He didn't wait for my permission. He reached out, took my left hand, and slid the ring onto my finger. It was a perfect fit, cold and heavy. It fits, I murmured, staring at the sparkling rock that was worth more than my life. I have a good eye for sizing up my acquisitions. The word acquisition made me flinch. He noticed. His expression softened, only a fraction. Relax, Ilara. It is a prop, a shield. As long as you wear this, every lowlife in Seattle knows that to touch you is to declare war on the Moretti family. He turned and walked toward a set of double doors I hadn't noticed. Come, we have work to do. I followed him. The doors opened into a walk-in closet that was larger than my entire apartment. But it wasn't empty. It was filled. Racks of designer dresses, rows of shoes, shelves of bags. Everything was new. Tags were still on. What is this? I asked, spinning in a circle. Your armor, Dante said, leaning against the doorframe, crossing his arms. My fiancée does not wear hoodies and torn jeans. I had a stylist come in while you were sleeping. She estimated your size. You? While I was sleeping? That's creepy. That's efficiency, he countered. Go shower, get dressed, pick something intimidating. We have lunch with my mother. My blood ran cold. Your mother? You didn't say anything about a mother. Does she know? About the deal? Dante's face hardened. The temperature in the room dropped. My mother is the matriarch. She knows everything, and she knows nothing. You will convince her that you are hopelessly in love with me, because if she smells a lie, she will eat you alive. He turned to leave, pausing with his hand on the doorknob. Oh, and Ilara. Yes? Burn the hoodie. You don't need it anymore. The lunch was a disaster waiting to happen, but not for the reasons I expected. We ate in a sunroom that smelled of jasmine and lemons. Dante's mother, Vittoria Moretti, was a terrifying woman. She was small, withered, and dressed in severe black lace, but her eyes were identical to Dante's, obsidian shards that missed nothing. I sat next to Dante, my back rigid. His hand rested on the back of my neck, his thumb idly stroking the sensitive skin there. It was a possessive gesture, meant to show ownership to his mother, but my body betrayed me. Every time his thumb moved, a shiver raced down my spine. She is thin, Vittoria stated, cutting into her veal scallopini. She didn't look at me, she looked at Dante. Like a stray cat. She has a delicate constitution, Dante lied smoothly, his grip on my neck tightening slightly. And she's had a difficult year. I intend to fatten her up. Vittoria finally turned her gaze to me. It felt like being scanned by an X-ray machine. You are Lydia Vance's girl. Stepdaughter, I corrected softly. Yes, ma'am. Lydia is a snake. She has no honor. Do you have honor, girl? I faltered. I looked at Dante for help, but he was sipping his wine, watching me over the rim of the glass. This is a test, I realized. He's not going to save me. I straightened my spine. I thought of the years I spent protecting my little half-brother from Lydia's wrath before she sent him to boarding school. I thought of the jobs I worked to pay bills she ignored. I honored my father's debts until they became impossible, I said, my voice gaining strength. I honored my family until they tried to sell me. I may not have money, Signora Moretti, but I have never broken a promise. Vittoria stared at me. The silence stretched agonizingly long. Then she let out a sharp, cackling laugh. Fire! Good! Dante weeds fire. He is too cold, like a block of ice. She pointed her fork at Dante. She will do, but watch her, Dante. Pretty things with sad eyes are dangerous. They make you weak. I am never weak, Mother, Dante said, his voice dropping an octave. We shall see, she muttered. After lunch, Dante led me down to the lower levels of the estate. The air here was cooler, recycled. We entered a soundproofed room that smelled of gun oil and spent brass.
a shooting range. "Why are we here?" I asked, hugging my arms to my chest. I was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and black trousers he had picked out. I felt like a doll. "Because if you are going to be by my side, you need to know how to handle more than just a fork," Dante said. He walked to a table and picked up a handgun. He checked the chamber with practiced ease, the motion fluid and lethal. "I hate guns." "Guns are tools. Hate the hand that holds them," he replied. He walked over to me and held out the weapon. "Take it." "No." "Ilara," his voice was a warning. "Vinnie Rossi is not the only enemy I have. If someone comes for you to get to me, I need to know you won't just curl into a ball and cry. Take the gun." My hand shook as I took the heavy metal object. It was cold. Dante moved behind me, his chest pressed against my back, enveloping me in his heat. He was so large, so solid. He reached around, his hands covering mine, adjusting my grip. "Feet apart," he murmured, his breath ghosting over my ear. "Lean into it." I could barely focus. His body was a hard wall of muscle against mine. I could feel the steady thrum of his heart. The scent of him, sandalwood and danger, was intoxicating. "Focus on the target," he whispered. "Imagine it's Rossi." That worked. I narrowed my eyes, visualizing Vinnie's greasy smile on the paper silhouette downrange. "Squeeze. Don't pull," Dante instructed. I squeezed. Bang! The recoil shocked up my arms, but Dante's body absorbed the shock, holding me steady. The bullet hit the paper, wide, hitting the shoulder, but a hit. "Again," he ordered. We spent an hour there. By the end, my arms ached, but I was hitting the center mass, and every time I fired, I felt a strange rush, a reclaiming of power. "Good," Dante said, stepping back. The loss of his warmth was immediate and jarring. "Why do you hate it, the violence?" I asked quietly. "Because it took my father. Not a gun, but the life, the gambling, the danger. It eats people, Dante. It hollows them out until there's nothing left." I looked up at him, searching those dark eyes. "Are you hollow?" Dante's expression tightened. For a second, he looked tired, ancient. "I was born in the dark, Ilara. I didn't have to be hollowed out. I was never filled to begin with." He pushed off the table, the mask of the Alpha sliding back into place. "Go rest. Tonight is the gala. We leave at 8. And Ilara—" "Yes?" "Wear the red dress." The dress was a weapon. It was crimson silk, strapless with a slit that went up to my thigh. It clung to every curve like a second skin. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the girl staring back. Her hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, her lips painted a blood red to match the silk. She looked expensive. She looked dangerous. But inside, I was shaking. Dante was waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs. He wore a black tuxedo tailored to perfection. When I descended, he stopped checking his watch. He went still. His eyes raked over me, starting at my heels and moving slowly, agonizingly up to my eyes. The look was visceral. It wasn't polite admiration. It was a devouring hunger. "Turn around," he commanded softly. I did a slow turn. "Adequate," he said, but his voice was rougher than usual. He stepped forward and offered his arm. "Let's go. The sharks are waiting." The gala was held at the Seattle Art Museum. It was a swarm of paparazzi, diamonds, and fake smiles. As the valet opened the door of the SUV, the flashbulbs blinded me. "Keep your head up," Dante murmured, his hand gripping my waist firmly. "Look at no one. You are above them." We walked the red carpet. Questions were shouted at us. "Mr. Moretti, who is she? Is it true you're merging with the Petrov family?" Dante ignored them all. He guided me into the ballroom, a sea of gold and crystal. The moment we entered, the room went quiet. Heads turned, whispers hissed like steam. Dante Moretti, the untouchable wolf, had brought a date. "Breathe," Dante said against my hair. "I have you."
We mingled. I smiled until my face hurt. Dante introduced me as his fiancée, his hand never leaving my waist. He was playing the part perfectly, attentive, possessive, obsessed. But then the air shifted. Well, well, isn't this a touching tableau? The voice was like oil on gravel. I froze. Vinnie Rossi stood before us. He was a short, thick man in an ill-fitting white suit. Beside him stood Lydia, my stepmother. She looked pale, her eyes darting nervously between me and Dante. "Hello, Vinnie," Dante said. His tone was pleasant, but I felt the muscles in his arm turn to steel. "I must say, Dante," Vinnie smirked, eyeing me up and down in a way that made my skin crawl, "I didn't know you were into my leftovers." Lydia gasped. "Vinnie, please." "Quiet, woman," Vinnie snapped. He stepped closer, entering Dante's personal space. "She looks good, Dante. Cleaned up nice. But we both know she's damaged goods. Her father was a drunk, and she's just a little runaway." Dante moved. It was so fast I almost missed it. One moment he was standing beside me, the next his hand was wrapped around Vinnie's throat. Dante didn't shout. He didn't make a scene. He simply squeezed. Vinnie's eyes bulged. He clawed at Dante's hand, but it was like trying to pry open a hydraulic press. The music stopped. The room gasped. Dante leaned in, his lips brushing Vinnie's turning purple ear. "Listen to me closely, Pazzo," Dante whispered, but in the silence of the room his voice carried. "She is not leftovers. She is not a runaway. She is mine." He tightened his grip. Vinnie made a choking sound. "She wears my ring," Dante continued, his voice lethal. "She lives in my house. If you look at her again, I will take your eyes. If you speak her name, I will take your tongue. Do you understand?" He shoved Vinnie backward. Vinnie stumbled, gasping for air, clutching his throat. Lydia was shaking, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. "Ilara," Lydia whispered, "what have you done?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she couldn't hurt me anymore, not while the monster standing next to me was breathing. "I made a deal," I said coldly. Dante straightened his jacket as if he had just brushed off a speck of dust. He turned to the crowd, which was watching in terrified fascination. "My apologies," Dante announced smoothly. "Mr. Rossi had something stuck in his throat. I believe he was just leaving." He turned to me, the darkness in his eyes swirling with adrenaline and something else, lust. "Dance with me," he ordered. It wasn't a question. He pulled me onto the floor as the orchestra hurriedly began to play a waltz. He pulled me close, his body hard against mine. I could feel the violence rolling off him in waves, but his touch on my waist was gentle. "You're crazy," I whispered, looking up at him. "You just choked a mob boss in front of the mayor." Dante said, his gaze dropping to my lips. "I protect what is mine." "Is that all this is? A performance? Protecting your asset?" Dante stopped moving. We stood in the center of the floor, the world blurring around us. He looked torn, a war raging behind his eyes. "It was supposed to be," he admitted, his voice rough. He leaned down. I thought he was going to kiss me. I wanted him to kiss me. "But you look like a queen in red, Ilara, and I am finding it very hard to remember that this is a lie." Before he could close the distance, a flash of light blinded us. A photographer. Dante pulled back, the mask slamming back into place. But as he led us off the floor, I saw a man watching us from the balcony. He wasn't looking at Dante. He was looking at me, and he was holding a phone to his ear. "The target is acquired," the man on the balcony mouthed. I shivered. Dante felt it. "Cold?" he asked. "No," I lied. But as we walked out into the night, I knew the cage door hadn't just closed, it had locked, and the things outside weren't just trying to get in, they were trying to burn the whole house down. The drive back from the gala was suffocating. The silence in the SUV wasn't the empty silence of our first meeting. It was heavy, charged with unsaid words and the lingering adrenaline of violence. Dante stared out the window, his jaw tight, his hand resting on his thigh, dangerously close to mine. I couldn't stop looking at him. I couldn't stop replaying the moment he had wrapped his hand around Vinnie Rossi's throat. It was terrifying. It was monstrous. And God help me, it was the safest I had ever felt. "Stop looking at me like that," Dante growled, not turning his head. "Like what?" "Like I am a hero. I am not a hero, Ilara. I just choked a man in a room full of witnesses. A hero would have called the police." "The police wouldn't have come," I said quietly. "You told me that yourself. You own the city." He finally turned to me. The streetlights flickered over his face, casting long shadows over his sharp cheekbones. "I own the city, but I do not own you. Not really." He looked away, his voice dropping. "Tonight was a mistake. I lost control. That makes me vulnerable. It makes you a target." "I was already a target," I countered. I reached out, covering his hand with mine. His skin was burning hot. "Dante? That man on the balcony?" "I know. My security team already swept the perimeter. He's a ghost, a mercenary named Silas. He doesn't work for Rossi. Rossi can't afford him." "Then who?" "Someone who wants to take my crown," Dante said grimly, "and they think you are my weak spot." The car screeched to a halt in front of the estate, but instead of the usual efficient exit, Dante didn't wait for the driver. He threw his door open, stormed around the car, and yanked my door open. "Get inside. Go to your room, lock the door, do not open it for anyone but me." "Dante, you're scaring me. What are you going to do?" "I am going to finish a war." He didn't come to bed that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, clutching the duvet. I heard cars coming and going. I heard shouting from the study downstairs. Around 3 a.m., the handle of my bedroom door turned. I shot up, heart hammering. "Who is it?" "Open the door, Ilara." It was Dante. His voice sounded wrecked. I scrambled out of bed and unlocked the door. Dante stood there. He had shed his tuxedo jacket. His white shirt was unbuttoned halfway, stained with dirt, and... was that blood? "Dante!" I gasped, reaching for him. He stumbled back, putting a hand up. "Don't. I'm filthy." "You're bleeding." I ignored his warning and grabbed his arm, pulling him into the light. There was a shallow cut across his ribs, soaking through the white cotton. "It's a scratch," he dismissed. But he didn't pull away this time. He looked at me, hair messy, wearing his T-shirt again, and his eyes softened. The obsidian darkness swirled with exhaustion. "They hit one of my warehouses. Silas, it was a warning." "Come here," I said, my voice firm. "Sit." I pushed him toward the edge of the bed. To my surprise, the alpha, the killer, the king of Seattle, obeyed. He sat heavily, putting his head in his hands. I ran to the bathroom, grabbing the first aid kit I had seen there. I came back, kneeling between his legs. "Shirt off," I commanded. He looked up, a ghost of a smirk touching his lips. "Ordering me around, fiancé? Someone has to." He hissed as he peeled the shirt off. His torso was a map of scars, knives, bullets, jagged lines of a violent life. I cleaned the new wound on his ribs. It wasn't deep, but it was angry. As I worked, the silence shifted. It became intimate. The air grew thick. I finished bandaging him and looked up. He was watching me. His gaze was intense, burning through my defenses. "You should run. Right now. Take the car. Take the money. Go." "I can't," I said. Because of the contract?" "To hell with the contract," I breathed. Dante froze. "Then why?" he demanded, his voice rough. "Because I don't think I can sleep without knowing you're in the house anymore." Something in Dante snapped. He groaned, a low, animalistic sound, and grabbed the back of my neck. He didn't ask this time. He crashed his lips onto mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a collision. It was desperate, hungry, tasting of whiskey and blood. It was a claim. I melted into him, my hands tangling in his dark hair. He pulled me up, lifting me effortlessly until I was straddling his lap. The cage door slammed shut, and I threw away the key. "Mine,"
he growled against my mouth. God help me, Ilara. You are mine.
Happiness in Dante's world was a fragile thing. It was glass waiting to shatter. For 3 weeks we lived in a bubble. The threat of Silas and Rossi loomed outside the walls, but inside we were untouchable. Dante taught me how to play chess. I taught him how to cook pasta that didn't come from a 5-star restaurant. He didn't sleep in the guest room anymore. But the 3-month mark was approaching, the end of the contract. It was a Tuesday. It was raining, a torrential downpour that battered the cliffs. Dante had left early for a meeting with the board, the old men who wanted to oust him for being too volatile. Stay inside, he had kissed my forehead. Marco was at the gate. I'll be back by dinner. I was in the library, reading, when the lights flickered. Then they died completely. The estate plunged into gray gloom. The generator, I thought. It should kick on instantly. It didn't. A cold dread pooled in my stomach. I stood up, setting the book down. The silence of the house was wrong. It was too quiet. The hum of the security system was gone. "Marco?" I called out, stepping into the hallway. No answer. Then I heard it, a soft thump from the floor below, the sound of a suppressed gunshot. "They're here!" Panic tried to seize me, but Dante's voice echoed in my head. "Focus on the target. Don't curl into a ball." I didn't run to the bedroom to hide under the bed. I ran to Dante's study. I burst in and went straight to the bottom drawer of his desk. I punched in the code he had made me memorize. 10/24, my birthday. The drawer clicked open. The black matte pistol lay there. I grabbed it. It was heavy, but my hands weren't shaking as much as I expected. I checked the chamber. Loaded. I heard heavy boots on the stairs. Not the polished shoes of Dante's men. These were tactical boots. I slipped behind the heavy velvet curtains of the window, pressing myself against the cold glass. The study door kicked open.
"Check the desk," a voice rasped. It was mechanical, distorted. "The girl is the priority. Alive." "Rossi wants her untouched," another voice asked. "Silas wants her. Rossi just paid the bill." 2 men entered. They wore tactical gear and balaclavas. They moved with professional precision. They scanned the room. "Clear," one said. "Moving to the bedroom." They turned to leave. If I stayed hidden, they would find me eventually. They would hunt me down like a rabbit in a warren. I am not a rabbit, I told myself. I am the Alpha's fiancé. I stepped out from the curtain. "Hey!" I shouted. The men spun around, raising their rifles. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think. I just saw the paper targets in the range. Squeeze. Don't pull. Bang! Bang! The shots were deafening in the enclosed space. The first man crumpled, clutching his thigh. The second man returned fire, the bullet shattering a vase next to my head. Shards of porcelain rained down on me. I ducked behind the heavy oak desk, my heart hammering like a machine gun. "She's armed," the standing man yelled into his radio. "Target is armed and hostile." I scrambled to the other side of the desk. I had the advantage of cover, but he had an assault rifle. "Give it up, little girl," the man taunted, moving closer. "You can't win this." I gripped the gun, sweat slicking my palms. I waited for his shadow to cross the patch of light on the carpet. But before he could round the desk, a new sound tore through the house. A roar. Not a human shout. A roar of pure, unadulterated rage. The front doors of the estate blasted open downstairs. Gunfire erupted, rapid, chaotic, violent. "Boss," the wounded man on the floor groaned. "It's Moretti. He's back." The man standing over me hesitated. That split second was all I needed. I popped up from behind the desk. He turned his rifle toward me, but he was distracted. I fired. The bullet hit his shoulder, spinning him around. He dropped the rifle. At the same moment, the study door disintegrated. Dante didn't walk in. He stormed in like a force of nature. He was dual-wielding pistols, his coat flying behind him like a cape of darkness. He saw the man standing. 2 shots. The man dropped. He saw the man on the floor. 1 shot. Silence. Dante stood in the center of the carnage, chest heaving, eyes wild. He scanned the room, the gun barrels smoking. "Ilara!" he roared, his voice cracking with panic. I stood up slowly from behind the desk, the gun still in my hand. He saw me. He saw the gun. He saw the blood on the floor, not mine. He dropped his weapons and crossed the room in 2 strides. He slammed into me, lifting me off my feet, burying his face in my neck. He was shaking. The Alpha was shaking. I thought I lost you. I saw the lights go. I thought I was too late. I handled it, Dante, I whispered into his coat, the adrenaline finally crashing. I started to cry. I handled it, Dante. He pulled back, framing my face with his blood-stained hands. He looked at me with an expression of awe and terrifying devotion. You defended the den, my queen.
The attack was the catalyst. It was the spark that burned the city down. Dante didn't wait for the police. He didn't wait for the board. He called in every favor. He mobilized every soldier. That night, Seattle bled. I stayed in the study, watching the monitors as Dante orchestrated the purge. He was terrifyingly efficient. He wasn't just a mob boss. He was a general. By dawn, Vinnie Rossi was found trying to board a private plane to Mexico. Dante didn't kill him. Death was too easy. Instead, Dante had him brought to the estate. They dragged Rossi into the main hall. He was bruised, weeping, a pathetic shadow of the man who had insulted me at the gala.
Dante stood at the top of the stairs, holding my hand. We descended together. Please, Rossi begged, looking up at us. I was just the middleman. It was Silas. He promised me territory. Silas is dead, Dante said coldly. My men found him an hour ago. He didn't die well. Dante stopped on the last step. He looked at Rossi with bored indifference. You tried to take my wife, Dante said. Fiancé, Rossi stammered. Just a fiancé. Wife, Dante corrected calmly. He squeezed my hand. My heart skipped a beat. You broke into my home, Dante continued. You frightened her, and for that you lose everything. Dante gestured to Marco. Strip him of his assets, every account, every property, every car. Give it all to the Vance estate. Rossi's eyes widened. What? You wanted to buy her family's debt? Dante smirked. Now you are the payment. Ilara now owns everything you ever built. You can't do this, Rossi screamed as Marco dragged him away. I'm Vinnie Rossi. You are nobody, Dante said, turning his back on him. The heavy doors slammed shut, sealing the noise out. It was over. The threat was gone. The debt was paid. But the contract was over too. Dante turned to me. The morning sun was streaming through the bullet-shattered windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. He looked tired, but lighter. It is done, he said softly.
Yes, I replied, a lump forming in my throat. It is. He walked over to the desk, the same desk I had fought behind, and picked up a folder. Here, he said, handing it to me. The deed to your father's house, the $5 million, and a ticket to Paris, one way. I stared at the folder. It was everything I had run for in the beginning. Freedom. Safety. You're firing me? I asked, my voice trembling. I'm setting you free, Dante said. He shoved his hands into his pockets, looking out the window. You survived the cage, Ilara. You proved you were strong. You don't need my protection anymore. You can have a normal life. Find a man who doesn't come home with blood on his shirt. I looked at his back. I saw the tension in his shoulders. I saw the man who thought he was too broken to be loved, too dark to keep anything bright. I looked at the folder. Then I walked over to the fireplace. What are you doing? Dante asked, turning around. I tossed the folder into the dying embers. The paper curled, blackened, and burst into flame. The ticket to Paris turned to ash. Dante stared at the fire, then at me. His eyes were wide. Ilara, that was $5 million. I don't want $5 million, I said, stepping closer to him, and I don't want a normal life. What do you want? He whispered, his voice hoarse. I stopped right in front of him. I reached up and undid his tie, pulling it loose. I want the wolf, I said. Dante let out a shuddering breath. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, not the massive diamond prop he had given me weeks ago. This one was different.
It was a band of black titanium inlaid with a single deep red ruby. It looked like a drop of blood on darkness. "I bought this the day after the gala," he admitted. "I told myself I wouldn't give it to you unless you stayed, unless you chose the cage." "I choose the cage," I said, "as long as you're in it with me." He slid the ring onto my finger. It replaced the shackle. This wasn't a contract. It was a promise. Chapter 10. The Obsidian Queen. 3 months later. The wedding was not a small affair. Dante wouldn't allow it. "The world needs to see," he had said. "They need to see the queen crowned." We were married on the cliffside of the estate, the ocean crashing below us, the sky a perfect cloudless blue. I didn't wear white. I wore a gown of pale silver embroidered with black vines. When I walked down the aisle, the rows of hardened mafia soldiers, business tycoons, and politicians went silent. Dante stood at the altar. He looked devastating, but when he looked at me, the darkness in his eyes wasn't scary anymore. It was a shield. It was a home. Lydia was there, sitting in the back row, looking pale and respectful. She knew her place now. She lived on a stipend I provided, in a small condo in Florida, far away. Marco stood as the best man, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo, but grinning nonetheless. When the priest asked for the vows, Dante took my hands. "I, Dante Moretti, take you, Ilara Vance, to be my wife, to have and to hold, to kill for and to die for, from this day until my last breath. I, Ilara Vance, take you, Dante Moretti, to be my husband, to love and to fight, to be your light in the dark, until the end of the world. You may kiss the bride." Dante didn't wait. He swept me into his arms and kissed me until the world spun. Later at the reception, we stood on the balcony overlooking the party. The city of Seattle twinkled in the distance. Our kingdom. "Happy?" Dante asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Deliriously," I smiled, leaning back into him. "Good," he murmured, "because the honeymoon is in Italy, and I have a feeling the Don of Naples needs to be reminded of his alliances." I laughed, turning in his arms to face him. I ran my hand down the lapel of his jacket, feeling the gun holstered beneath it. "Business on our honeymoon?" I teased. "With us, amore," Dante grinned, the expression making him look years younger. "It is always business. But tonight," he lifted me up, sitting me on the marble railing of the balcony. The drop was behind me, the party before me, and Dante Moretti right in the center. "Tonight," he whispered, pressing his forehead to mine, "is just for us." I looked at the man who had found me in a rainstorm, the man who had offered me a cage and given me a kingdom. "I love you, Dante," I whispered. "I worship you, Ilara," he replied. And as he kissed me under the moonlight, I knew that the girl who ran from the glass slipper was gone. In her place stood the Queen of the Wolves, and she was never running again.